Hey everybody, it's Tracy again, and IDOs continue to be popular, but they continue to be fraught with this morass of gray area legal issues, right? And I've talked about this before in other contexts, like of this like crypto headless horseman that everybody wants to believe in, but doesn't exist, right? Like with DAOs and decentralized apps and everything like that. At some point you're centralized, right? At least from a legal perspective as it stands today, right? Today, this could change and I hope it changes, but today, right, there is no such thing. The headless horseman doesn't exist, right? And with a IDO, all you're doing is taking your token and selling it on a DEX, which is decentralized, and we'll talk about the DEX side of it in a minute. But the reality is, like for an IDO, it goes back to your project and what the nature of your token is. Because even though the DEX may be decentralized, if you're pushing a security token through that DEX, you are effectively, irrespective of the decentralized nature of the exchange, you are effectively conducting what could be deemed to be an illegal offering of securities. And, you know, I've talked about the turnkey jet no action letter, which is, albeit one page, but really all you can go on that gives you some roadmap of what's a utility token and what's not. And it's far more useful than Howie could ever be in this day and age, because Howie's like 80 years old. But you really have to look at it before an IDO and say, what is the nature of my token? Like, what are the rights and privileges being granted to the purchasers, right? And this goes for IDOs, ICOs, whatever you want to call them. It doesn't matter, right? And so the problem is, if you have a security token, you put it through a DEX, and it turns out to be a security, well, you sold to non-accredited investors. You didn't meet the informational requirements of Reg D. If it was offshore in your US company, Reg S would obviate a lot of that, but you still have some issues depending on where you're selling in the securities laws of those jurisdictions, right? So, you know, it all goes back to not so much how you're selling it, like what type of exchange, whether it's an IEO or IDO, it's the nature of your token. So I always encourage people like look at this, right? Like have somebody professional look at it and say, all right, this is a security for these reasons, it's not for other reasons. And I've seen a million different attempts, and I'm not, or methodologies against it. And I'm not, casting aspersions on any of them, because anything is better than what we have. Because literally the only legal standard, legal precedent we can rely on right now is the turnkey jet no action letter, right? Which has 4 or 5 bullet points of why the turnkey jet token wasn't a security, right? So the big overall lesson about an ID issuer doing an IDO is make sure you're not selling a security. That's it, right? Nothing's really changed. Now on the DEX side, that's a different story, because while decentralized, it's not, right? Somebody promotes it, somebody creates it, somebody's managing it. And I see some DEXs out there that will take fees, that'll take commissions, they have trading engines, things like that. And you have to look at it and say, all right, am I triggering, not so much in the United States because we don't have a crypto specific law, and most of it just relates to fiat to crypto exchanges, which DEXs typically do not allow, right? But one, in the US, are you a money service business? If you're allowing crypto to crypto exchanges, which the answer is probably yes, which would require KYC at a minimum, right? And then offshore, depending on where you are overseas, you have specific crypto licenses, whether it's Estonia, Lithuania, Antigua, Bermuda, Switzerland, wherever the case, Dubai, you have specific crypto laws, which this actually triggers, right? This kind of activity would trigger, especially if you're taking fees, right? If you're taking commissions off trades, which I get the point is to kind of support the DAO or the DEX, but the reality is that you're triggering laws because you're taking a commission. And on top of that, and that's a utility token. If you're allowing security tokens, which many of these DEXs do because they put no due diligence into who, sort of lists or launches their token through them. If you're allowing a security token to be sold through your DEX or on your DEX, then you're acting as a de facto securities exchange, and you don't have the license to do that, right? This is like the big issue with players like FTX and Binance, and why they're being investigated is because so many of the tokens that are listed on their exchanges, regulators like the SEC have said, well, this is or could be a security and we want to know why, right? And so, like, as I mentioned before, the gatekeeper function to getting a token listed on any exchange is a legal opinion that says this token isn't a security. But it's not enough to rely on when regulators come knocking on the door, right? So with the DEX, which, people say, hey, we have no control because it's decentralized, that argument hasn't played out yet. That argument hasn't been proven. That argument is something that if you want to die on that hill, somebody's going to have to and win for it to really be something that others could safely rely upon and use these decentralized organizations, whether it's a DEX, a DAO, whatever the case may be. So, there's two sides of it. Like, I like it, right? I think it's provably fair, an IDO, right, compared to IEOs, and which have all sorts of shenanigans in it and stuff like that. And I think it's probably the best way to do it, right? If you're doing a token launch, but it's not without its, despite what a good portion of the crypto community will want to say, it's not without its risk, both for the issuer and for the DEX itself. And those two parties have to be in complete communication, but you have one side that's saying, no, we're this headless horse, there's no one to talk to. So how do you really get there, right? How do you get there? I don't know. But the reality is, until somebody says we're truly decentralized, can prove that they're truly decentralized, and willing to, again, die on that hill in front of a regulator and win, it's a bad argument. It's a bad argument to rely on. So if you have any questions, check me out, Tracy, Tracy.io, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers.